Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Norman Robinson, and welcome to the debate for Louisiana Public Service Commissioner in District 3, underwritten by the Alliance for Affordable Energy, Housing Louisiana, and Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. 3 Southeast Louisiana nonprofit organizations, and brought to you by this station, WLAE. On Saturday, December 10th, voters in District 3 head to the polls to select a public service commissioner. As you know, commissioners serve 6-year terms with a 3-term limit. District 3 spans several parishes along the Mississippi River, including St. Charles, St. John the Baptist, St. James, and parts of Orleans, Jefferson, and East Baton Rouge parishes. Now, this election comes at a time when residents statewide are facing rising costs for natural gas, fuel, and energy. And this race is so important because the Public Service Commission's main job is to regulate the public utility companies and the energy sector in our state. Essentially, commissioners are charged with fighting for your right to fair pricing from your utility company. The Public Service Commission is a constitutionally created and independently elected body. It's not at the direction of the governor or state legislature. Commissioners have no one to report to other than you, the voters, who elect them into office. So, your vote, understandably, in the December 10th runoff race is your voice. And now let's meet the 2 men vying for the District 3 seat. Incumbent Lambert Boissiere III, who was first elected to the Public Service Commission in 2004, and challenger Devontae Lewis, who is the Director of Public Affairs and Outreach for the Louisiana Budget Project, a nonprofit that reports on public policy. But first, let's take a moment and give each candidate a chance to introduce themselves. Gentlemen, you have 1 minute for your introduction, and we will begin with Mr. Boissiere.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And I'd like to thank the Alliance for Affordable Energy and the other members who underwrote this forum for giving us an opportunity to be here. As said before, I'm Lambert Boissiere III, your Public Service Commissioner. And it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve. Thank you for outlining the district. It's important to know that though New Orleans and Baton Rouge and the areas between are in the district, there's been a lot of confusion. So I want to clear it from the beginning. The Louisiana Public Service Commission, and myself included in that, do not regulate the utilities in the city of New Orleans. Now, that is the job of the of the New Orleans City Council. We regulate the utilities outside. And for that, I've been very proud of that. I fought for people from day one. I fought for renewable energy. I fought for a hardened system, and I fought for better rates for everyone in Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Boissiere. And now, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this debate. I strongly believe it's a human right that everyone have access to fresh air, clean water, a warm house in the winter, and a cool house in the summer, and utility bills that do not push them further into poverty. But sadly, right now, Louisianians are facing hardships as their bills are getting extremely high, and we're seeing catastrophic storms affect our state. In this moment in time, we need bold solutions for the future of Louisiana. Someone who will commit every single day to put hard-working families first. And that's exactly why I'm running for Public Service Commissioner, because I believe we need to protect our ratepayers. We must clean up our power grid. We must tackle corruption to ensure the rich and the powerful are not buying off our elected officials. And we must invest in green jobs because we know the new green economy is the way forward. This is the time for Louisiana to have a new direction, and I'm looking forward to serving as your Public Service Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Before we begin, let's go over the debate format. Each candidate will have 1 minute each to answer each of the questions. At my discretion, there may be 30 seconds given for a follow-up or a rebuttal. At the end of the debate, each candidate will be allowed to ask his opponent 1 question, and we'll save time at the end for their closing statements. And gentlemen, no biting, no scratching. If that happens, somebody's getting a whooping. We'll start with the likely reason there is so much interest in this race: high electric bills. So what specific action would you take as commissioner to help residents manage their bills? We begin with Mr. Boissiere. You go first.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, like I mentioned in my opening, I've constantly fought fought for lower rates and fought for consumers. So first of all, when you think about high bills right now, it's seasonal. I live in the state, I live in New Orleans, and I pay my utility bill as well. But let's face it, bills are high everywhere, at the grocery store, at the gas pump. It's just the economic times. But things that we can do at the commission, we have done and we will continue to do. In 2021, Entergy proposed a rate increase, and we fought that down to the tune of, we saved ratepayers over $60 million. In addition to that, we've made other moves. For example, we deferred the fuel rate. When you look at why the utility bills are so high, it is strictly fuel, not the utilities regulated rate. And we don't control that. But the thing we can do is to transition from our traditional fuels into more solar. And I'm happy to say that that's being done, and I know that I can continue to work hard to get that done.
Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a problem that is facing so many, and we need to talk about the reality of the state of Louisiana. Nearly 20% of all people who live in our state are in poverty, and Louisianians pay more than $3,000 more on average than every other American on their utility bills because of the excessive fees that Entergy and CLETCO are putting on. And so what I plan to do is what I call the Ratepayers Bill of Rights, which really examines these excessive fees that companies have been putting on, that we talk about fixed billing for our seniors and people with disabilities, and that we finally tackle the corruption so Entergy is not paying off our elected officials to do their bidding. We know that affordability is not just about the number that a bill is, but about whether or not people have enough money to put food on their table, whether or not they don't have to take out a second job to afford their bills. And we must do something different in this moment to ensure Louisianians are protected.
Thank you. Do you think it's the Commission's fault that power bills are so high? Why or why not? Mr. Boise, again, you first.
Well, I'll put it like this. We've worked extremely hard to bring the rates down, but there's a whole lot more work that needs to be done. So the Commission has taken on and will continue to take on the responsibility of constantly lower rates as we see fit. The Commission does have a lot of leeway into reducing rates. We set the rates, the rate of return, the rate of profit, if you will, or interest that the utility companies make. That's all set by law. But there are many, many things that are not set by law. That's why I really like your question. Fuel rates are not set by the Louisiana Public Service Commission. Those are worldwide commodities. Other factors like storms are absolutely outside of the control of the Public Service Commission, but we do our best to reduce the costs when such storms do happen. Now, I know everybody has high bills, and I'm very sympathetic to that myself. I know we all do. But when you look around the nation, Louisiana still has some of the lowest rate compared to states around us and throughout this entire nation. And so, but there's a lot more work to do. I've done the work. I'm not just about promises. So it's performance over promises, and I'll continue to do the work to get the rates as low as possible.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Lewis? Do you think it's the Commission's fault that power bills are so high?
Absolutely. I mean, we can look at the reality of what is happening. While our rates across Louisiana may be lower than other states based off of kilowatts, it is the excessive fees that are put on that is causing the bills to be high. The Associated Press did a study that showcased Louisiana was one of 5 states that had excessive profits from late fees. Louisianians pay about $16 per customer in late fees, while the national average by other states is $6. And the Public Service Commission has done nothing to ensure that we are lowering the cost of these excessive late fees that are hitting our lowest income families in the state of Louisiana. District 3 has some of the most impoverished communities in this state, and that is why we need someone who is centering the people and understanding the dynamics of poverty in our state, because we can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Thank you. We've been talking about electricity rates, and rightfully so, but despite having some of the lowest rates in the country, Louisianians have some of the highest electric bills. And how will you reduce the energy cost burden on Louisianians? Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we have to start doing is talking about the solutions that would do that. And that's why I've been a big supporter of what we call weatherization, which is where we go in and to ensure people's homes are insulated correctly, that their roofs, their windows, their doors, their floors. And we're going to see a significant amount of investments from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. And so what I did before I decided to run is I fought for $50 million of American Rescue Fund money to be invested into weatherization. And we know these are some of the simple solutions that we need an advocate for. Now, while that money doesn't lie within the Public Service Commission, you can have a public advocate who is at the legislature and working with the governor to ensure that money is invested into people so their costs can come down. And so I think that is one policy area that we can definitely see that would change people's lives.
Mr. Boissier?
Sure, absolutely. There are so many things that can be done. Again, we have done the work, and I'll give you some examples, but I don't have just promises. I have results. When rates were going high, especially during the pandemic, and we were quarantined, at the commission, we did a disconnect moratorium to help people who were hurting. And as bills have been high ever since, we have weather disconnect moratoriums in place. So we're very conscious of our poor people in Louisiana and how to help them when they need it. In addition to that, I'm on the ground doing the work, so I know the fact that we put people on payment plans who are unable to pay their bills. We step in and help people not get disconnected when they're in trouble. Again, we've done the work. It's important to know that I have the performance, not just the promises. It's real easy to talk about problems, but it's even more important when you help solve them. More recently, we voted on, we talked about ratepayers' Bill of Rights. We already have those in place at the commission, and we just expanded it even further. So I continue to work and continue to make the changes that people need as we're going through a tough time together.
You talked about customers being unable to pay their electric bills, but too often they are indeed unable to pay their bills because they are so high, leading to disconnects. So do you think it should be the Public Service Commission's responsibility to prevent people from serving, from being disconnected if they can't pay? Why or why not, Mr. Boissier?
Please excuse me. Could you read the question for me again? I didn't get it, please.
Too often customers are unable to pay their bills because they are so high, leading to disconnects. Do you think it should be the Public Service Commission's responsibility to prevent people's service from being disconnected if they can't pay?
Okay. I think definitely we have a role in that to help people who need it. We have a motto in my office. When somebody calls and needs help, help them. Don't give them lip service, and that includes if they live in the city of New Orleans that we do not regulate. People call me all the time in the city of New Orleans that are struggling to pay bills. They're struggling with disconnects, and we always step in to help. Of course, we've done district-wide and statewide disconnect moratoriums, but on individual cases, we step in, and I never pass the buck. I never say, oh, well, you should have done this or something else. I step in and help. Even when it's regulated by the city council, I let them, the consumer know, we don't regulate your bill in the city of New Orleans, but I'll be more than happy to call the utility company and work with you and get you a payment plan, even though it's just outside the jurisdictional limit of the Public Service Commission. And I do it constantly. So I'm well aware of the issues, I'm well aware of the problems, but I also am very well aware of the solutions, and we implement them and we continue to do so.
Mr. Lewis?
I do think it is a priority. We know that power for people is what keeps their medicine cool. It is what keeps their medicine protected. It's what keeps our seniors safe. And we should have a moratorium on disconnections. When I first announced, it was the first thing that I called on the Louisiana Public Service Commission this summer to follow the New Orleans City Council and put a moratorium on disconnections. They didn't do it. They asked Entergy to work with our people. We can't keep relying on the company to do what they say they should do. The job of a regulator is to hold them accountable. And I believe that disconnections is something that we must stop in this state. We can't keep voting for all of energy surcharges and fees over the last 17 years and then say, oh, well, we shouldn't disconnect people's power. It is about performance, and the performance of the Louisiana Public Service Commission has been failing short of protecting our people.
I'm curious, we talk a lot about New Orleans not being a part of the oversight for the Public Service Commission. Should some law be passed where the Public Service Commission is then responsible and not the City Council, since it seems that you can't do anything about what's happening in New Orleans?
I actually support municipalization. I think it showcases a stronger connection to the community when the local community has jurisdiction and regulatory power. And so I think there is a relationship between Entergy Louisiana, which is regulated by the Public Service Commission, and Entergy New Orleans, which is regulated by the City Council. But there are oversteps. When we talk about the transmission tower that fell during Hurricane Ida, that was at the jurisdiction of the Louisiana Public Service Commission. And we should have been looking at ensuring that our grid was hardened to ensure the structure didn't fall. So there is a relationship, but I support municipalization.
Mr. Boissier.
Well, it's a very interesting question, and there are definitely pros and cons. Once again, I think when you look at municipalization, or not municipalization, or look at the separate jurisdictions, let's be clear with the languages here. The separate jurisdictions here, there are some reasons to allow the local community, the local jurisdiction to regulate. But if you want lower bills, let the Public Service Commissioner do it, because we have much lower bills outside the city. And some of the things my opponent's talking about would just raise rates over and over again. If you can't disconnect, and I don't want to disconnect people, you get write-offs. And write-offs get passed on to other ratepayers, causing higher and higher bills. But the fact of the matter is, I think that we've updated our system well enough outside of New Orleans, and I would like to further that discussion of whether or not the Public Service Commission should, or the City Council should continue to regulate in the city of New Orleans. Right now, if you want higher bills, stick with the City Council. But if you want lower bills, consider the things that we've done at the Commission to not only help people, but to reduce the bills outside of the city.
Hey, thank you. So, oftentimes, voters complain that the only time they have any contact with their elected officials is when there's an election. So I'm curious as to what your plans are to connect with the public beyond this election to make utility bills affordable. Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think this is why we see so much apathy in our communities, because oftentimes you only hear from your elected officials when it is election season. And I've been a public advocate for the last 15 years fighting for policy. And so one of the things that I know that we should always do is we should be openly available to the community. And one of the ways I would do that is hosting a town hall in every parish on a regular basis. It is having an open line of communication for constituent services so they know that they can reach out. And it's also being proactive by ensuring that the community knows when the meetings are, knows how to engage in the meetings, and know what we are voting for at the commission. Something that I propose that I would do is that every vote that I will take, there will be a spreadsheet that explains why I took that vote and what it is, because I believe in accountability. And the way you're accountable is by being accessible and transparent.
Mr. Boissier?
Absolutely. Once again, performance over promises. I've been doing this job a very long time, and the people in my district know me very well. They know me very well in New Orleans. Let's face it, I led in every parish. They know who I am, and they know how to reach me. I'll just give you an example, because I have real examples, not, hypotheticals. When people call me, I don't just help them. I go to their houses sometimes. I look at the problems that's being done. I told a story the other day. A woman called me who had high bills, and I said, ma'am, I'm going to send somebody out to reread your meter. And they went. She still had a high bill. I'm going to get them to change that meter. Let's find out what the problem is. I live in a small house. I have a high bill. I don't know why. I said, let me find out why. And I talked to her over several months, and she just kept having high bills, and I couldn't figure it out where other people would have been helped. I went to her house. And when I got to her house, I said, ma'am, how long has your window been missing? She was missing a window at her house and didn't realize her air conditioning was blowing right out the window. She didn't have a board or a piece of paper. She had nothing. And so that's hands-on, and I think I'm pretty sure I helped her replace her window, and I helped her to solve her problem.
Thank you. Gentlemen, what do you see as the Commission's most important role? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Boissier.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, to be responsible to the public in order to get the lowest rates possible with the highest reliability. And that is a monumental challenge, but that is his goal. And to keep the utility companies reasonably helping to serve with reliability and the lowest rates possible. We are accountable to the public, as you brought up earlier, and we are tough on the utility companies. We just earlier this summer, when the bills started spiking, we dragged the CEO of Entergy, Leo Denault, before the commission, and we grilled him for 3 hours about the practices of the commission. And all I'm going to say is this, he's now stepping down as CEO because of the tough questions we put on them and the things that we help deliver for the people of Louisiana.
And now your turn, Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think it's holding the utility companies accountable. I think it's a very interesting point that we just heard about Chairman Leo Denault stepping down, because on October 28th, just 10 days before the election, he wrote the commissioner a $1,000 check for his re-election. So I'm not sure that grilling did much for him. So what we need is commissioners who are not in the back pocket of the executives of the companies. You can't grill them at the hearing and then turn around and accept their campaign donations to fund your campaigns and go to hotels and eat meals. We need someone who is an independent regulator, not beholden to the companies, not accepting their money, and speaking on behalf of the people of Louisiana. And that's what I do. That's why I promised in this election I wouldn't accept a dime from executives and corporations that the Public Service Commission regulates, and I haven't done it at this far.
Would you like to rebut that?
Oh, I would, absolutely. Do I get 30 seconds or what do I get?
You get 30 seconds.
All right, I'm going to stick to the rules. Mr. Lewis only says those things to deflect from his own record. First of all, he doesn't have any record of service. He runs for everything under the sun. But more importantly, he's being funded by out-of-state, sinister, dark money PAC. It's funding his whole campaign. He'll be a puppet of the millions of dollars being pumped into our state from out-of-state people in New York, California, and everywhere else, telling us how to run Louisiana. I take exception to the things he just said about me. That's not true, and he should know better. But the fact of the matter is, he is a puppet of dark money PACs that's dangerous to our elective process in this state.
Thank you. You get to rebut that, and then we'll move on.
Absolutely. I mean, if he wants to talk about donors who care about Louisiana's poor people or who care about climate change, we can have that debate.
I do.
But what we have seen is since October 28th, $13,000 from Entergy's PAC, $3,500 from their executives, $1,000 from Entergy CEO Leo Denault, another $2,000 from their executives funding his campaign. So if we want to pit utility companies against people who care about the citizens of Louisiana, I'm happy to have that debate any day.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on now. If you win, what will be your #1 priority on the commission? Mr. Lewis, you're up first.
Yes, if I win, my #1 priority is ensuring that we create a renewable energy portfolio standard so we can accomplish Governor John Bel Edwards' goal of 100% renewable energy by the year 2035. This portfolio standard would create the process for us to transition from natural gas to renewable energy over time, talk about compliance, talk about penalties for non-compliance, and join 37 other states who have made renewable energy their focus. We know our economy cannot wait. Our people's health cannot wait for us to make the transition to fully renewable energy. And so I think that is the utmost importance, because not only will it make our people healthier, it will improve our economy, which I think is a win-win for the people of Louisiana.
Mr. Boissier, what will be your #1 priority?
Well, once again, helping the people of Louisiana to get the lowest possible rates. First of all, let me be clear. When we look at doing regulatory going forward, I'm chairman this year, and renewable energy is at the top of my list. Before becoming chair, we had only voted on one solar field in Louisiana, and it had only just been approved when I took chair. Since then, we've approved 10. Just to be clear, those are good for our economy, they're good for our fuel mix, they're clean energy, and they keep people healthy and with low emissions. It also is not subject to the whims of the natural gas market that many of our utility companies and coal using companies have to bear. So solar is a great way to go. I'm looking forward to more of that, and I'd love to go on. I have more to add. I'll get it on the next question.
Okay.
I see I'm being flagged off.
Thank you for being so considerate.
Yes.
In your opinion, what is the greatest threat to Louisiana residents that the LPSC has the authority to address? Again, you first, Mr. Boissier.
All right. Good. Well, once again, there are things that I fought for from the very beginning that I think are really good for Louisiana, such as solar energy and a renewable energy mix. Okay, to get us off of traditional fossil fuels, at least to diversify and to transition properly. Also, our environment. We want a good, clean environment. But we want those things to happen in a transition that's not going to spike our rates. If we shut all these things down tomorrow, we will have a reliability problem, and we will have extremely high rates going forward. We need to transition in a smart way that allows for these things to grow and not raise rates on families and not cause jobs to be cut. At the same time, when we bring them in, we're bringing in investment, infrastructure, and we're bringing in good, clean, green energy jobs while we do our transition. And those are my goals, as well as other things moving forward in the upcoming year.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think what we have to do that is most important is harden our grid. We know people will lose power on a random day, but especially now that we know climate change has made our storms, our hurricanes, our thunderstorms stronger than they have ever been. And if our grid cannot withstand that, we're going to see power outages that last longer than they ever have before. And so I believe this is one of the most important things that we have to do, is ensuring that we're not just allowing Entergy not to keep up hardening their grid, as the Associated Press has showcased in their reporting, and passing the buck to the consumers through their fees, but that the Public Service Commission is really ensuring that they are doing what they promised, to ensure that we can withstand and sustain these storms that are going to affect us in a great way. And so I think the grid is one of the places we must focus the most on.
So let me ask this question in transition to that. Now, what would you do to make our energy system more reliable? Mr. Lewis, we begin with you first.
Absolutely. I think the first thing that we have to do for reliability is start talking about maintenance. When we look at what we have seen across within the transmission tower, it was because maintenance of our equipment and our transmission structures was not maintained. But our consumers are paying these fees every single year, every time they pay their bill. And Entergy keeps going before the commission asking for another hardening fee or another hurricane fee, and we're not seeing the investments in our equipment. If we want to sustain our power grid, we must maintain our equipment, but then we also must transition to renewable energy. We can look at a neighboring state that is also prone to storms in Florida. And Hurricane Ian was stronger than Hurricane Laura and Delta and Ida, but they saw no transmission structure fall, and they saw power come back on faster. We need to be doing the same thing here in the state of Louisiana.
Thank you. Mr. Boisiger.
Great, thank you. Once again, I think that the record will show that I've done the things that he's talking about doing, and his promises are great, but he still lacks a lot of data and information. His accuracy is not right. In Florida, and I'll pick up where you left off, in Florida, the bills are much higher, the rates are higher than in Louisiana, because they've done things to make their system, I admit, but those things cost a lot of money. And yet, the Storm Ian was a Category 4. We've had 4s and 5 hit us too. They still have over $1 billion of damage. And yeah, some places came on time, early, but some places were out for weeks and weeks and weeks. Look, I contacted the Florida Commission, and I've worked with the Commission. I opened a docket the next day so that we can study them, just like we did in Texas when Ice Storm Uri. We learned from everybody else, but we have way more storms than Florida, and we know what we're doing. When we securitized after Katrina, we won national and international awards for the way we managed the bills so they wouldn't spike. We made it as reasonable as possible to get through these tough times of hurricanes. So I know what I'm doing. I know that we're doing the right thing, and I know that the things that we're doing are prudent and save people money.
Thank you. Last question before we go to break. Okay. What should the Commission be doing to protect customers from enormous costs of recovery from hurricanes and tropical storm systems, which are increasing in frequency and intensity due to climate change? Mr. Boisiger?
Great question. I love it. This is one of the you can study the Public Service Commission about rate cases and things like that. The one thing they never tell you about is your biggest job is dealing with hurricanes and the cost of those storms. First of all, like I mentioned before, we've constantly rebuilt, and the biggest tool that we have is securitization. Under traditional rate making, after a storm, the rates would go up 50% or more. In our case, it does go up, but just a few dollars depending on the storm. We securitize those bills at really low rates, 1 or 2%, to save people millions of dollars. I think I looked at some of the studies we've had in the last 10 years. We've saved people over $1 billion in savings by securitizing. The other thing that happens, you mentioned the towers that fell in Ida. I think it's a great place to have a conversation. But those things are maintained to the point that now that they had come down, they went back up. We replaced them with much more resilient towers that can handle much stronger storms and can be repaired much faster than the old ones that were up before.
Mr. Lewis?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this goes back to the point of holding companies accountable. We should have been doing this before the tower fell, all right? We shouldn't have a tower fall in the river and then wait weeks before we start talking about building a resilient and sustainable infrastructure that can keep power on for our families. And so I think what we have to do is we have to be a strong regulator on Entergy and holding them accountable for the investments that they should have been making. While their profits continue to roll and they are funding their stakeholders and funding campaigns for PSC members across the state of Louisiana, they should have been making investments in hardening our power grid so it can sustain these strong storms. And I think this is the part of the problem is for too long we have let Entergy and CLETCO run amok, doing what they see and not actually making the true investments in the people of Louisiana.
Thank you, gentlemen. We are halfway through our debate with plenty more to come. We're going to take a quick break to acknowledge our underwriters, and when we come back, our candidates will have the opportunity to ask one another a question. Stay with us.
Since 1985, the Alliance for Affordable Energy has been working to ensure equitable, affordable, and environmentally responsible energy policy for all Louisiana energy consumers. As Louisiana's only dedicated watchdog, we monitor, educate, and participate in state and city utility regulation to ensure the public's best interests. Power Coalition for Equity and Justice is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening democracy in Louisiana by building power through civic representation, engagement, and access in historically underrepresented marginalized populations, including Black and brown people, other people of color, women, and youth. Housing Louisiana is a statewide network of 9 regional housing alliances advocating for the housing needs of Louisiana's residents and supporting policy that promotes economic growth and the creation of new jobs and homes.
Welcome back to the debate for Louisiana Public Service Commissioner. District 3, a runoff between Lambert Boissiere III and Devontae Lewis. I'm your moderator, Norman Robinson. The winner of this race will play a crucial role in forming our state's energy future, and his decisions will have a direct impact on your electric rates. So let's get right back into our questions, shall we? Gentlemen, one thing the PSC does that people may not realize is set prison phone call rates. It can cost upwards of $5 for just the first minute of a call, which seems ridiculous to me. How would you address the high cost of phone calls to and from prisons here in Louisiana? I guess we start with you, Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think this is an important question to our families here in Louisiana. As we know, Louisiana used to and may still incarcerate more people than anywhere else in the United States of America. And if before you're incarcerated, your normal income is around $20,000. And when we take the average of a phone call rate that is charged here in the state of Louisiana, families can spend over half of their yearly income just to communicate with their loved ones. This is why we need to lower the rates and the surcharges that we see on calls to incarcerated individuals. I believe we should follow the steps of other states to make these phone calls free, or at least the first 30 minutes free. I believe we also need to start talking about investing in tablets, so ensuring that people can use webcams as a way, but what we have to do is in the dependence and the kickbacks that we see the sheriffs and telecommunications companies use to make these excessive fees on our families.
Mr. Boissiere.
Great. Once again, performance over promises. This is an issue I take very seriously. Foster Campbell and I have already voted on this several times, and we've championed this issue over and over again. We have lowered the rates from what they used to be. Remember, there's 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans. Foster Campbell and I fought and fought and fought and brought motion and motion before the commission. Sometimes it doesn't pass because we can't get enough votes from our commissioners. But we did get it passed, some things passed several times, and we have lowered the rate. And I've met with some of the sheriffs because we only cap the rate at the height of it. We put a cap. We don't put a floor. So the rates could go lower if the sheriffs and other people that manage the jails wanted them to. Foster Campbell and I will continue to push to get that ceiling lowered as low as possible, because we understand that families need to communicate with their loved ones in jail, that the family winds up paying, not the inmate so much, and that it is a burden, and we care about that. But once again, I'm not just talking about it, I've been doing the work on it, and I've been voting on it and raising the issue since I've been on the commission, so I understand it very well.
Thank you, gentlemen. How would you describe what you want Louisiana's energy future to look like? Mr. Boissier.
Oh, great. Near future, I think that we are moving in the right direction by bringing in more renewable resources. Near future, in just a month or two ago, we voted on what co-op deal was a Demco deal, which is a co-op in Louisiana that allowed us to bring in a significant amount of solar power to the co-op and combine that with market power to come into the state, greatly reducing the rates over traditional rates, even in Louisiana. And Louisiana has some of the lowest rates in the nation, but these were even lower than anything we have now. We voted on that. Just under a year ago, we voted on what we call 1803, another group of co-ops that needed power. We did a very similar deal, significant amount of renewable and solar into their portfolio, and market purchases to lower the rates once again. Those are the kind of things I think we need to see moving forward in order to lower rates, give us more solar and renewables, and give her a cleaner environment and a better energy cost for our citizens and our businesses.
Mr. Lewis?
I think we need to transition to the new green economy. I think the days of fossil fuel and natural gas being our driver is the old way of doing business, in that this is the moment to invest in solar, wind, and battery, to build our power grid to be sustainable, to make our communities healthier, and to build a strong, robust economy that is investing in jobs. The new green economy transitions us into the future and makes Louisiana one of the leaders across this nation in ensuring that we are tackling climate change, but that we're also providing energy efficiency to our families. It requires a host of issues, from 100% renewable energy to tackling corruption, but to also protecting our ratepayers. And when we focus on the new energy economy, we build a stronger, more prosperous Louisiana where every single person has the opportunity to succeed.
With that being said, what does energy efficiency mean to you, Mr. Lewis?
Energy efficiency means to me that we have a system that is reliable, that is sustainable, that is affordable, and that is resilient. A system where we are utilizing energy in a way that keeps people from going broke. A system that is making our environment clean by investing in solar, wind, and battery, as I just talked about. A system where our power stays on because the infrastructure is built to withstand storms and withhold the catastrophic things that faces us. And energy efficiency means to me that we are investing in jobs that are providing a sustainable economy. And so I think it takes in account a host of issues that I just talked about, but particularly affordability, sustainability, and resiliency in that to be a true marker of where we should be in this state.
Mr. Boissier.
Good. The question was, what does energy efficiency mean to me?
Yes.
Well, Mr. Devontae likes to talk, but I don't know if he knows the issue, what he's talking about. What energy efficiency means is that you use that kilowatt hour most efficiently. That is not wasted, that is delivered to the end user and have the greatest amount of impact. All those things sound great, but that's not energy efficiency. Energy efficiency really for the residential customer means to weatherize the home where you can, and to find ways that the person can take the kilowatt hours into the home and not waste them, like that example I gave earlier with the lady missing a window. She should have had a more efficient home. And in businesses, it means the same thing. But in businesses, they have the ability to weatherize and upgrade their own. And in homes and in our governmental agencies, we have to weatherize. We're going to cheaper light bulbs or more efficient light bulbs, more efficient appliances, and weatherization. Those are the things I voted for. I continue to vote for. I raised this issue back in 2013. It was the first time it came on the commission, and I still fight for it every day. I'm doing the work, not just promising. I know how to get these things done, and I get them done.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Well, actually, the next two questions. Yep. This is two parts. You can have 2 minutes to answer these two questions. So they are, what steps would you take to expand renewable energy in Louisiana? And what will be your biggest obstacle in getting this accomplished? We begin with you, Mr. Boissier.
Great. Well, I want to allude to the things that I said earlier. If you allow, I said from the beginning, since I've been on the commission, I fought for the same things I'm fighting for now: lower bills, more efficiency, diversification of fuel mix, and just a better, more reliable system. I'll continue to do those things. So the first thing is, we have transitioned this year into having greater solar in the state. 10 new fields when we had none when I took over earlier this year. We also voted for, like I mentioned, new energy deals for the co-ops that have allowed for, once again, greater renewable energy and energy being bought on the open market, brought in where it's cheaper than we can generate for ourselves. Those are the models that we need to use to go forward. In addition to that, I'm very excited about some of the infrastructure money coming in from the federal government and the Inflation Reduction and Jobs Act that is going to come in and help us harden our systems here, harden the grid here, make us more resilient. And all those things together will give us the greatest amount of benefit to the people of Louisiana and the companies here. Was the second part the greatest obstacle?
Yes.
The greatest obstacle, I add that into now.
An obstacle.
That everything has an obstacle. Even the greatest ideas are going to be met with obstacles, and you have to know how to overcome them. Trust me, there's 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans on the commission, but I'm the chairman being elected by my peers. I can overcome obstacles. But the biggest obstacle is the political obstacle. Being able to push the ideas that matter. And I've been able to get those things done. Foster Campbell and I make a great team, and we've been able to recruit Commissioner Green over. And so now Commissioner Green and even Commissioner Francis are now paying attention to some of the things we've been saying all along, that we need more renewables, we need more of a market-based system, and that we need to get rates lower for the people and the reliability up. We have open dockets on resiliency. We have open dockets on all the things that matter, like solar and renewable energy.
Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think this is why I strongly believe in a renewable energy portfolio standard, so we can start having concrete discussions of the holistic process to ensure that solar and wind are part of our energy discussions. We know that when we invest in renewable energy, we lower the cost for our families and that we make our environment cleaner. And so we have to be very vigorous ensuring this. This is why I'm a strong supporter of net metering. This is why we need to work with the Louisiana legislature to bring back the tax credits for solar panels and for rooftop solar. Why we must invest in projects like the Community Lighthouse to ensure that we're using community solar as a way to keep communities lit up and protected during storms and when your power goes out. And I think these are the initiatives that we need a strong, fierce advocate about renewable energy. And when we talk about the obstacle, we know there are obstacles, but we know the biggest obstacle has been utility companies, because we know renewable energy is cheaper, and which means when we are providing a cheaper service, there's less money for their shareholders to make. And that's why we have to really have independent regulators who are divorcing themselves from those utility companies and really centering the people. Because we know when people stand up, when we have an inclusive, collaborative process working with a lot of different industries and different people, we will see those investments. But as long as we're letting the rich and powerful set the frame of the debate, as long as we're letting the utility companies that are not centering your needs and only centering their profits needs and their shareholders' needs, we won't see those significant investments. And so I think that's the biggest obstacle, is ending the grip that they've had on our political process.
Thank you. You mentioned something about options, and we're now talking about options. So Louisiana residents, on that note, along with businesses, are expressing a desire to have more options for where their electricity comes from. So what customer-centered options will you explore if you win? Mr. Lewis?
Absolutely. I think competition is something that we must talk about, but I will set the frame that we can't just talk about competition in a sole place. Because if we start going down deregulation, which is sometimes the way that we get competition, we can look to our neighbors in Texas, where we see that your bills actually go up a little higher, and then there becomes a competition about who is responsible for the equipment. However, that's why I think all options should be on the table, and considering the best consumer consumer-friendly policies. I think municipalization is an option that can go. It's a long-term solution, so it won't be something that we can do overnight, but it's a conversation and initiatives that we should take. But then also looking at co-ops and diversifying the options that people have. But I would caution that we have to make sure we do it in a way that is protecting consumers and not just allowing another multi-billionaire company to come in and compete, but also make your bills higher at the exact same time.
Mr. Boissier.
Sure. Like I mentioned in previous questions, these are all things I've already voted for and championed. The question is about giving consumer options. I just voted on that 2 months ago with the Demco deal, giving significant options to the consumer to be able to get power in off of the open market where it's cheaper. Now, that's not deregulation. That's a discussion that we can have later on. But right now, we've already voted for that. I already voted earlier this year on it's called 1803, which was another fuel docket that powers another group of co-ops in Louisiana that allows for market options. In addition to that, I still believe that we have to continue to work our energy efficiency. But my opponent is saying these things at the same time he's talking about challenges, and he's basically being beholden to dark money. He's going to have to do what dark money says to do. This out-of-state dark money. He doesn't have interest in Louisiana. He doesn't have concerns for the people here. It's all outside stuff, telling him what to say, and he's just going to be a puppet to the millions of dollars that they're pumping in to boost him up in this race.
I'm going to have to let you rebut that.
Thank you. Let's be very clear. I'm no puppet to anyone but my mother and God. I have been standing up for Louisianians for the last 15 years, fighting for their access to health care, fighting for access to a living wage. I'm not bought and paid off. The commissioner here for the last 17 years has collected over $1 million from utility companies. He's voted for every fee that Entergy has did. So if we want to talk about who's pulling his strings and who's actually has strings in this race, I think we should just look at the record, and the record shows that Entergy has owned Commissioner Boissier.
Let's move on, gentlemen. This next question has a lot of people hot under the collar, and that is because of a 2019 vote by the PSC, those of us with solar panels can't get credit on our bills for the extra energy our panels produce. Would you, gentlemen, consider reopening retail net metering? Mr. Boissier.
Absolutely. First of all, that's a great question, and I'm excited to answer it. People in New Orleans do not deal with the solar panels. I know you mentioned your solar panels. Your solar panels here in New Orleans are regulated by the city council. But solar panels outside of New Orleans, I opened that docket, I worked on that docket, I fought for that docket. I was the commissioner that fought the hardest for what is called net metering. That's so. And I know the Alliance for Affordable Energy knows it because I worked lock and step with them on all these issues I'm talking about. I worked hardest to get it passed, to get it brought to the commission, and to get it in place. Now, there are some people that still get around the state, they still get the benefits of that. People still have solar panels and they still are receiving credits for that. So it hasn't gone away. It just has to be reopened, and I totally agree. Since then, we've done things that may be slightly more efficient, but I'm more than happy to go back to that, to open it up. We just need a third vote. So Commissioner Green, Commissioner Francis, even Commissioner Scrametta, Foster and I need you guys to step up and make this happen.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I think we need to return to net metering. We know home rooftop solars is the way to ensure that people have stronger reliability, and their bills are actually cheaper. We've seen this. This is why companies fought so hard to change this rule. And I think it's important, and I would be a fierce advocate of reopening net metering and also making sure that people have access. We're going to see amazing investments from the Inflation Reduction Act. Over 190,000 Louisianians will get help to put rooftop solar panels on their homes. And so we know with the investments that we're seeing from the federal government, the Louisiana Public Service Commission needs to step up and ensure that we can help even more Louisianians provide a safer, more reliable energy system by utilizing solar panels.
We'll begin with you on this next question, and that is, what is your position on expanding transmission in our region?
Yes, I think we have to talk about expanding transmission. I think this is a very important topic that faces a lot of Louisianians. When we are looking at our competitive market, our monopolies that we should say, we see that we face significant challenges to our families. Power and transmissions go out regularly. The transmission tower fell here in Louisiana. And so what we need to do is start thinking and talking about how do we expand. how do we ensure a stronger, reliable system in our state? That may be talking about burying transmission lines underground, which has showcased and proven, linesmen will tell you, as a way to provide more reliable services to our people. And so I think this is a topic that we must continue to hold utility companies accountable for and bring into the discussion at the Louisiana Public Service Commission.
Mr. Boissier,
Would you, if you don't mind, would you please repeat the question?
is, what is your position on expanding transmission in our region?
Great question. I'm completely supportive of expanding transmission. When you expand transmission, it gives everybody, all consumers, access to more power that they can't get now. It's like widening a lane on the interstate. It gives us more access. Okay? And so not only have I talked about that from day one, we got it done. About 6 years ago, and maybe 5, 6 years ago, I'm not exactly sure, we voted to enter what is called MISO RTO, which is a transmission agency that allows us to get power and send power from far away as Canada down to here in New Orleans and Louisiana, that we can share power throughout. And we have hot spots, and we have spots that have restrictions that we have to continue to expand. But the more we expand transmission, the more power that can come in at a cheaper price. But we got to be careful. The transmission is very expensive. So you have to make smart decisions based upon banking and legal knowledge that you expand to access the cheap power, not to just build transmission that's going to be borne on the ratepayers anyway.
Well, thank you. The next question is, right now, billions of dollars are available to Louisiana from federal legislation. What will you do, gentlemen, to make sure we get that money and make the most of it for our utility bills? Mr. Boissier.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. What will I do is what I am doing right now. I'm working with the administration as we speak. I've met with the administration to discuss how that money should be received by the state of Louisiana, and in some ways how it can be distributed. Now, we don't necessarily have a voice in how it's going to be distributed. These are federal dollars, and Congress is going to tell us how the money is going to be spent. But we have a very wide array of ways that the money, that I know the money is coming to Louisiana, and I know it's going to be spent in certain ways. Number one, it's going to be incredible boost to our electricity grid. A lot of that money is going to go to the electricity grid to help us be more resilient, to help us solve some of our transmission issues from your previous question, to help us be sturdier and stronger and allow more power to come in. In addition to that, it's going to also do other things that we haven't talked about here, like boost our broadband around the state that's very lacking. It's going to be more robust, and it's going to cover the entire state, as well as several other things that federal dollar is going to do to really improve the life here in Louisiana. I'm not talking about what I might do. These are things, panels that I'm working on right now to bring this money home.
Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. I'll continue to be the fierce advocate that I have been. As I told you earlier, I've worked hard this legislative session to ensure, or tried to ensure, that $50 million would go into weatherization. But what we're going to see is we're going to see rebates upwards to 50 to 100% for individuals to replace their stoves to eat energy and efficiency, our refrigerators. We need to ensure that people know about these rebates. I talked about the 190,000 Louisianians that will be able to get rooftop solar panels. We're going to see that 99.5% of Louisiana businesses will qualify for federal grants to be able to make sure that their business is energy efficient. So what I'm going to do is be a fierce advocate at the legislature to make sure that money is being appropriated correctly, but also be a community activist, making sure that the people know about their rebates, their tax credits, and the investments that they can utilize to make their homes and their businesses more energy efficient across this state.
Thank you. As my old friend Bill Elder used to say, all right now, it's time for the candidates to ask each other a question. Gentlemen, keep your questions to 30 seconds. Your answer will remain at 1 minute. So, Mr. Boissier, we begin with you. What do you want to ask Mr. Lewis?
Thank you very much, Norman. Let me see here. Actually, my question hopefully is an easy one for you. What commissioner received the Consumer Champion Award from the Alliance for Affordable Energy?
the last time, or I've heard you talk about this, an award that you received in 2016, nearly 6 years ago. I mean, I think if we're going to talk about consumer champions, we need to face the reality of what's happening today, not what happened years ago. Right now, we know Louisiana families are struggling. We know your bills are higher. We know that we have not made the significant investments in renewable energy, and that we have an energy corporation that is controlling our system. And so we need to ask ourselves, do you feel like there's been a champion for you? And if you don't, let's change it for the next 6 years, because we cannot keep going on the same path that we've been going on thus far.
And now, Mr. Lewis.
Well, do I get to kind of rebut? Because I don't think he answered the question properly.
What is the answer to the question?
Lambert Boissier received the Consumer Champion Award from the Alliance for Affordable Energy. He knows that.
All right.
But I think it needed to be said because he didn't answer it.
Okay.
The Alliance is here, they know
you said it, so let's move on.
All right. Now,
what is the question that you'd like to ask Mr. Boissier?
Absolutely. We talked earlier about incarcerated phone calls and the work that you did in 2013. But 3 months after that rule was passed, you issued a stay. To stay the ruling for Securus that would have paid back the excessive fees. And that passed on a 3-2 motion. Commissioner Holloway and Commissioner Campbell voted against your stay. Can you tell the people of Louisiana, why did you stay that order that would have brought millions of dollars back to families? And what are you going to do about it, since the judge has kept your stay in place since 2015?
Great question. First of all, I think you're misunderstanding the action at the commission. It was my motion that reduced the rates of the prison phones. I made the motion to reduce it from what it used to be years ago. It was myself and Foster Campbell that championed this issue. There's no way in the world I'm going to let you twist it around to say I'm against prisoner phone rates going down. I have been a staunch fighter to reduce those costs to people. I peeled all the costs off of that rule, making sure people wouldn't have to pay those. Now, in a process where you have to work with other commissioners, some things get changed because you don't have enough votes. But I have been a fighter for people who are incarcerated, that the prison phones and the jailhouse phones can come down, not only in rates, and all the fees have been removed. So I want to be clear. Don't be confused by the language. And we're going to continue to fight till it's lower and lower and lower. And that's what I've stood for. You can check the record. That's what I stand for, Mr. Devante.
All right, gentlemen, as we are nearing the end of our hour, we now want to give each of you time for your closing remarks, and you will have 1 minute to cover anything you wish to. Mr. Boissier.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I want to thank the Alliance and the other members who helped sponsor this forum and give us an opportunity to talk directly to the people and discuss our ideas. I'm proud of the work that I've done at the Commission. I know that we voted for the lowest rates possible. I know that we worked hard to give consumers a chance. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I understand the work because I've done the work. I know how to legally get things done. I know how to work with people and work with citizens to bring your voice to Baton Rouge to fight for people who need it. Now, I'm here in Louisiana. I'm born and raised right here in New Orleans. My parents are here, my grandparents are here, and I live and love District 3 and lived here my entire life. I fight for this district. And people, local people, know me, like me, and donate to me. My opponent, on the other hand, gets dark money from out of state. Remember, I'm the Alliance for Affordable Energy's award-winning consumer champion. I stand for people, and I continue to fight for the people that need help.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, you get the final word.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this debate and having us here. Louisiana, let's talk the reality. We know our storms are getting stronger. Our power grid is getting weaker. Your bills are getting higher, but corporations like Entergy are getting richer. We have a moment right now that we can do something different. If you are okay with the status quo, I am not your candidate. But if you're ready for a bold solution, a brighter future, a more prosperous future, I ask for your vote because I have been fighting for the people of Louisiana all my life. I got my start very early at 15 making this fight because I strongly believe in this community. I love Louisiana and I love our people. That's why my campaign is about grassroots. It is ordinary people giving $5, $10, $15 funding my campaign. And that is how we do it. We can stand up for community and build a stronger Louisiana when we all fight together. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your comportment and your composure. And we want to thank both of you for being here as well, gentlemen. And hopefully you, our viewing audience, has learned more tonight about what the Louisiana Public Service Commission does and which of these two candidates will get your vote on December 10th. And this reminder that early voting ends Saturday, December 3rd. Election day is Saturday, December 10th. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. For more information on the LPSC and the upcoming election, log on to all4lpsc.com. And thank you to our underwriters tonight, the Alliance for Affordable Energy, Housing Louisiana, and Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. And thank you to WLAE for producing this debate. I'm Norman Robinson. Thank you again for joining us.